The 2024 presidential election is now behind us. We might do a few more videos on it, but it's now time to look ahead at 2028 because in 4 years, we will learn who the successor to Donald Trump is going to be. He's been in the last 3 elections, but after winning his second, there's no doubt he will not be on the ballot in 2028. And so in this video, I'll be making my very first, and this is a very early prediction, but my very first electoral map projection for the election in 4 years. And for the nominees, I have Gavin Newsom on the Democratic side, J.D. Vance on the Republican side. They simply are the favorites for their party's nominations right now, although on the Democratic side, it is very close. It's basically a 3-way race between Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, and Gretchen Whitmer. All 3 of them are governors: Gavin Newsom of California, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. And then on the Republican side, J.D. Vance is by far the favorite, followed by Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump Jr. And so for now, we're just going to go off of these odds. I mean, J.D. Vance is going to be the vice president for the next 4 years. He's a strong debater, which means he won't have too much trouble getting through the primaries. So as long as nothing really terrible happens for Vance here in the next few years, it is very likely he will be Trump's direct successor. It's probably not going to be Ron DeSantis, and it definitely isn't going to be Nikki Haley. And so now taking a look at the map, I mean, it really is going to be very different. 2024 was a huge political realignment in favor of the GOP. I mean, states like Texas and Florida, they're all moving to the right. Texas, for a while, people thought that it was shifting in favor of Democrats. That clearly hasn't really happened. And Florida, which was a swing state as recently as in 2020, it is now one of the most conservative states in the country. Trump won it by 1% in 2016, by 3% in 2020, and now by 13% against Kamala Harris. Iowa and Ohio are also redder than ever, and in Arizona, Donald Trump won by a whopping 5-point margin. He also flipped Nevada, being the first Republican to win the silver state in 20 years. So when it comes to the solid red states, it is going to look a little bit different. J.D. Vance is going to get Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except its 2nd district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, as well as the 2nd district of Maine. This is typically what we see, but we're also going to include, of course, Texas and Florida. Florida hasn't been a solid state since the 80s, but now it is going to be safely within the Republican category. And then, of course, we have Iowa and Ohio, 2 states that went to Obama in 2008 and 2012, but Trump flipped in 2016 and has won ever since. And so this will give Vance and the Republicans basically 219 electoral votes by default. I mean, in the worst possible scenario for Republicans in 2028, there's no way the GOP is going to lose any of the states already colored red on this map. Now, the list of solid states is going to look different for Democrats as well, just because of how terribly Kamala Harris performed in traditionally Democratic strongholds. I mean, just look at her performance in New York. Joe Biden carried the state by 23 points. Kamala Harris comes in 4 years later, wins it by 12. New Jersey is even worse. Biden carried it by 16. Kamala Harris today is on track to win by just 6. New Jersey will be one of the battleground states going forward. And then in Illinois, Kamala Harris wins by 10%, even though the last 3 Democratic nominees, Obama, Clinton, and Biden, they all won the state by the exact same 17-point margin. So another significant drop from the past to today, with Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket. And so in terms of solid states, Kamala Harris did do okay in Washington and Oregon. Not too much of a change in margins, but she did do poorly in California. Joe Biden won the state by 29 last time. This time, Kamala Harris wins it by just 21. And the worst part is that this is literally her home state. She is literally from California, and she still somehow performed 8 points worse than Joe Biden from the last election. Gavin Newsom isn't going to do too much better. I mean, he basically won re-election in 2022 by a 20-point margin, which in California is not impressive at all, but he is going to win it by more than 12 points. The Golden State will be solid for Newsom. Illinois, though, that is no longer a solid state. New York is not going to be solid in the next election either, nor is New Jersey, but we do have Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine, as well as Hawaii. Gavin Newsom will likely hold on to those races. This gives him 120 electoral votes. We're now going to move on to the likely states, which will be decided by 5 to 12 point margins. Starting off with the likely states for J.D. Vance and the Republicans. I mean, Donald Trump did incredibly well in Arizona. He literally won it by a likely margin. So J.D. Vance is probably going to hold on to Arizona. Generally, it has been shifting to the left, but that trend has clearly reversed over the last few years. We also have a few more swing states from 2024 where J.D. Vance is going to absolutely dominate in 2028. The next one is North Carolina. It went to Trump by 3%. The former president carried it in all 3 of the last 3 elections against Clinton, Biden, and now Harris. And so North Carolina, the reason why it was even this competitive in 2024 was because of Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor. If he wasn't on the ballot, Trump probably would have been able to win North Carolina by 5 points or more. J.D. Vance will likely be able to do that in 2028, especially against someone as liberal as Gavin Newsom. He basically has no appeal in the Midwest, no appeal in the Northeast, barely any appeal in the Sun Belt besides maybe in Nevada and Arizona. But really, Gavin Newsom would be one of the worst possible choices for Democrats to make, but considering his name recognition and influence, it is looking more and more likely that he really will be the way Democrats choose to go. And the last likely red state on this map is going to be Pennsylvania. J.D. Vance is, of course, from Illinois, neighboring Pennsylvania. That is going to give him a slight advantage there, plus the fact that Gavin Newsom, again, just has no appeal in the Midwest. Pennsylvania shifted significantly to the right. Out of all 3 of the former blue wall states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Trump won the Keystone State by the largest margin. Republicans also flipped the Senate seat here, held by Bob Casey over the last 18 years. David McCormick, the Republican nominee, will be the 53rd Senate Republican. That was something nobody saw coming. Casey was leading by double-digit margins in the polls just a month ago, but somehow McCormick came out with a victory, and so in 2028, Pennsylvania is only going to continue shifting further to the right, with J.D. Vance probably on track to win by a 5-point margin at the very minimum if he does run against Gavin Newsom. Now, for Democrats, they have quite a few likely states as well, starting off with Illinois and New York. These are states where Republicans are not going to be able to win them for a while, but considering the trend, it is possible that they make incredible inroads in the next few election cycles, and potentially these states become competitive maybe in the 2030s, 2040s. But for right now, New York and Illinois are still quite liberal. We also have Colorado. This state shifted more than any other to the left over the last 20 years, since 2004 until 2020. Now, in 2024, Kamala Harris's performance was worse than Joe Biden's, but not nearly as significant of a drop-off in Colorado as we saw in many other places across the country. So there really is a lot of support for Democrats in Colorado. That's why I do still have it as a likely blue state, and that will be it. Gavin Newsom now at 177, J.D. Vance at 265. He's just 5 electoral votes away from 270. We're now going to fill in the lean states. These are going to be the battlegrounds, the toss-ups. I mean, look at the map on your screen right now. Very different from 2024. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, not really that competitive anymore. Instead, we have states like New Jersey, Virginia, and Minnesota. And so starting off with the lean Republican states for Vance, basically, I have all of the 4 remaining battlegrounds that we haven't filled in yet from 2024. Georgia, obviously, Vance is going to win. Gavin Newsom, Democrats, they don't really have that much of a future in Georgia. It is competitive, but the state has clearly shifted back to the right, and fundamentally, it is still more conservative than it is liberal. We also have Wisconsin and Michigan, which Trump won in both 2016 and 2024. And finally, in Nevada, Republicans won the governorship there, and also we had 2 Senate races races in Nevada in 2022 and one in 2024. Both of them were incredibly competitive. Democrats only won because they did have incumbent senators in those races, but as the years go on, Nevada is only going to shift more and more to the right. JD Vance will definitely be able to win it in 2028. As for the lean blue states, Gavin Newsom, we're going to give him Maine. The state is still pretty liberal overall. Kamala Harris' performance here was okay. She won it by around 5-6 points. Nothing too impressive. We also do have New Hampshire and New Jersey. I mean, just like New York and Illinois, but a little bit more competitive. These are still two states where Democrats are favored. They're still probably going to win them for at least the next few cycles, but in the future, especially New Jersey, it really can get incredibly competitive. I mean, New Jersey's shift has just been incredible. It used to be a solid blue state. I mean, just a month ago, we thought it was a solid blue state, but suddenly it has become one of the most competitive on the entire map. And also, we do have the 2nd District of Nebraska. Kamala Harris won it by around 4 to 5 points. I don't see it really shifting too much in the next 4 years. So with the lean states filled in, JD Vance is at 312 electoral votes, the exact number Trump won in 2024. Gavin Newsom not even at 200 yet. And so now we have the 3 tilt states. New Mexico is only going to get more competitive from here as Hispanic voters continue to shift more and more to the right. I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time, but Republicans are going to make huge inroads in New Mexico. Kamala Harris won it by 5% in 2024. I have Gavin Newsom carrying it by less than 1 in the next election against JD Vance. I would say in 2032, there's definitely a very real chance that Republicans will be able to flip the state, but in 2028, that still might be a little early. However, I definitely see JD Vance winning up in Minnesota as the Midwest continues to shift further towards the Republicans. I mean, this was a region Democrats dominated back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. I mean, Barack Obama won every single state in the Midwest in 2008 when he was first elected, and now we're looking at a 2028 electoral map where the only liberal state left is Illinois. I mean, Kamala Harris's performance in Minnesota was abysmal. This was the home state of her running mate. She's going to win by less than 4%, even though Joe Biden, who ran with nobody from anywhere near Minnesota, I mean, Kamala Harris was from California. When Joe Biden won in 2020, he carried Minnesota by double Harris's margin. And so Minnesota is only going to shift further to the right. That trend's been happening for a while now. Amy Klobuchar's margin in her Senate race was basically cut in half from 2018. And then in Virginia, this is another state where Republicans have been making huge inroads over the last few years, especially with Glenn Youngkin being elected as the state's Republican governor in 2021. So Virginia, the final state on this map, it will also be tilt Republican. And so this is my very first ever 2024 electoral map projection. JD Vance at 335 electoral votes, a clear victory over Gavin Newsom. Republicans are looking like they're in a very good position to continue dominating in the Electoral College, which does favor them, but not only that, they look like they're in a position to continue winning the popular vote. Trump was the first Republican to win the national vote since George W. Bush in 2004, and JD Vance, if he is the nominee in 2028, he will likely be able to repeat Trump's success. He'll also be able to add new battleground states to the map, like Minnesota, Virginia, New Mexico. The map is changing, and it's becoming more and more favorable for Republicans, especially after what we saw in 2024 with Kamala Harris. Democrats need to move in a different direction. They cannot continue shifting further and further to the left. Joe Biden was okay. He was still a moderate, and that's why he was able to very narrowly win in 2020. But with Kamala Harris and what Democrats are doing today, people have rejected that, and if they go with someone like AOC or Gavin Newsom, they are going to fail. It would be much smarter for them to nominate someone like Gretchen Whitmer or Josh Shapiro, although at this point, it does seem very unlikely that any of them are going to be able to defeat JD Vance. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.